It all started in Tokyo in 1884, where some ancient pottery was discovered in the Yayoi district. The pottery was noticeably different to the oldest pottery found in Japan, which is known as the Jomon period. In this period, the people were hunter-gatherers. They used stone tools. The pottery found, as well as other artifacts discovered after, showed that whoever made them was not from the Jomon period, but of a different culture that was advanced for the time. They were expert farmers and had bronze and iron tools. They had a social hierarchy and were interested in water for purification. It was clear to historians that they discovered a lost culture. In today's video, we'll be covering the Yayoi period from 300 BC to 250 AD and how this period in history set the foundation to what is modern day Japan. Here's a breakdown of what we'll be covering. We'll be looking at what distinguished the Yayoi period from the Stone Age Jomon period that came before. We'll also be diving into ancient sources of information on the Yayoi and the controversies that came from it. Lastly, at the end of the video, I picked out an artifact that I thought was pretty interesting and I wanted to talk about. Before we get started, for those who haven't already and are interested in the content I make, take a moment and subscribe and tap the bell icon to stay notified of upcoming videos. If you like the video, leave a like and share the video. Now with that said, let's dive in. The Yayoi culture goes as far back as 300 BC, where it first appeared on Kyushu Island, Japan. The Yayoi culture then expands upward to the Japanese mainland of Honshu, where it stops at the northern districts of the island, overtaking the Jomon as the dominant culture. The Yayoi period lasted around 500 to 600 years. After the Yayoi period, we have the Kofun period, where unique burial tombs are found that define that period. So what defines the Yayoi period? Let's start with Yayoi pottery and what makes it different. The oldest Yayoi pottery is dated to around 300 BC, and is how the Yayoi period is dated. That doesn't mean that the Yayoi culture isn't older, it just becomes harder to prove evidence-wise. The dating for the Yayoi period is still a matter of debate to this day, which I'll talk more about near the end of the video. With that said, let's get back to the 2,300-year-old pottery. Yayoi pottery early on was no different than the previous Jomon period, but over time a new style of pottery emerged. This Yayoi pottery was not as decorative as the Jomon period and was still unglazed, but it was more practical for daily use. The pottery was fired at higher temperatures and was sometimes made less porous by using clay slip. It looks like Yayoi pottery is made on the pottery wheel, but it is believed that the pottery was made using the coil method to making pottery, just like in the Jomon period. It's thought that the Yayoi pottery originated from Korea, as it is very similar to the pottery from the Momon period. It may suggest that the Yayoi originated from Korea. On the other hand, Yayoi pottery shows aspects of Jomon pottery, meaning that the Yayoi could have branched out from the Jomon culture, or that the Yayoi and Jomon cultures blended together over time. The next advancement out of the Yayoi period is what they found in the pottery. The oldest pottery from sites in northern Kyushu showed marks of rice husks and carbonized grains of rice, enough to know that the Yayoi were farming early on in their culture, and is one of the biggest advancements over the Jomon. In the Jomon period, the people were hunter-gatherers and often had to seek out food sources. This was an unstable source of food, as the animals wouldn't stay in one place. There is evidence that the Jomon culture did some farming at a small scale, where rice farming is first seen at the end of the Jomon period, but there is no evidence of tools made for large-scale farming, more like gardening. It is the Yayoi period that revolutionized farming for Japan. The Yayoi started with rice cultivation, which likely originated in southern China from the Yangtze River Delta. The Yayoi first started farming rice in non-irrigated fields and in the marshlands. As the population grew, they were able to improve their farming techniques and opted for paddy fields with irrigation canals, with dams and underdrains to control the flow of water. Researchers even found wooden piles that marked the divisions in the field. It is safe to say that the Yayoi's farming techniques were quite advanced for the time. Now, the Yayoi did not achieve this level of farming with just stone tools. This leads us to our next advancement, metallurgy. The Yayoi period saw the advancement of tools. The Yayoi first used stone tools that advanced to iron and later used bronze. The fact that the Yayoi had iron tools since the beginning hints that they likely got them from China or Korea, as advanced metalworking skills were not developed overnight. According to the Wei Shu, a Chinese document from the 3rd century AD, it says that a large amount of iron was found in southern Korea that was under Chinese influence. It is uncertain whether the iron and bronze weapons, tools, and metal objects were forged outside of Japan or locally. Around 100 years later, the Yayoi were able to produce close to the quality of the imported metal items. Some of these items were swords, arrowheads, spear tips, axe heads, knives, sickles, chisels, fish hooks, and needles. Unfortunately, very few iron artifacts from the Yayoi period were found, which would suggest that they likely melted them down for other uses. As for bronze, the Yayoi used it to make mirrors and weapons like swords and spearheads, but since bronze was the rare metal in Japan, the Yayoi used it for ceremonial use and was owned by the wealthy. The Yayoi now had efficient tools, which led them to further improve other aspects of their culture, such as better housing. Towns and villages at the beginning of the Yayoi period still used the pit house that was used in the Jomon period, but later in the period, the Yayoi eventually built wooden houses that were off the ground by using wooden supports. One of the best examples of a Yayoi settlement is Asahi, that was discovered in 1929. It is one of the largest Yayoi settlements, as well as being one of the largest trading centers located in Aichi, Japan. Asahi measured around 1.4 kilometers east-west by 0.8 kilometers north-south. This settlement was well defended, which included fencing, dry moats, ibatis, which is fallen debris, like trees or branches, and wooden spikes to slow down their enemies. Here's an example of the settlement's layered defenses. We now have an understanding of the technological advances of the Yayoi period, but what about the Yayoi themselves? What did they look like? What was their society like? What were their beliefs? In the Yayoi period, there hasn't been any writing found to describe what Yayoi life was like, but luckily, the ancient Chinese sent envoys to Japan throughout the years, and they recorded what they found out. Let's throw up a list of documents that give us a timeline of Yayoi period Japan. In 57 AD, ancient Chinese historians described Japan as the land of Wa, that was made up of hundreds of tribal communities that were ununified. This description of Japan is different to the Nihon Shoki, the second oldest book in Japanese history. It was written in 720 AD by a committee of scholars. The Nihon Shoki describes the founding of Japan as a 700-year tradition of unified states, which is counter to what the Chinese historians say. That's interesting. In the History of Han, published in 111 AD, and the History of Wei, published around 551 to 554 AD, they describe the makeup of the Yayoi society, that there was a shaman queen called Himiko who ruled a powerful kingdom called Yamatai from 187 to 248 AD. This kingdom was said to have ruled over 100 chiefdoms. In the History of Wei, there was an account from 297 AD that describes the Yamatai kingdom as the most powerful of the chiefdoms due to many successful wars over the years. In 432 AD, we have the Hohan Shu that gives us another description of Japan. They said that the land of Wa was in the middle of the Lo-Lang Sea. Lo-Lang, for those that don't know, was one of 4 commanderies ruled by the Han Dynasty in China when they conquered northern Korea. The text also says that the land of Wa was made of 100 communities and that 30 small chiefdoms were in contact with China. These Chinese documents also go into detail about what Yayoi life was like, so let's take a look. In the Book of Wei, Yayoi men are described as being covered in tattoos made of red ochre to ward off dangerous fish, or for other spiritual reasons. The Yayoi wore loincloths that lacked stitching or very little. Yayoi men are said to have looped hair and wore a headband that covered their ears. Yayoi women had their hair done in curvy loops. It is said that it was common in Yayoi culture to have more than one wife, maybe 1 or 2, for the everyday commoner, and around 4 or 5 for the wealthy aristocrat. As the Yayoi society was a class-based system, the lower class and the upper class. The lower class was always subjected to obey the upper. If a commoner wanted to speak to an aristocrat, they had to show respect to their superior by kneeling on the ground with both hands and wait for a response. The Yayoi were said to be into purity and divination. They baked bones on a fire and looked at cracks in the bone to look for a sign of good or bad luck. The Yayoi mourned their dead for around 10 days or more, and in that time they would not eat meat. They would sing, dance, and drink sake. After the mourning, the family of the deceased would go into the water to purify themselves. Before we move on to the next text that describes Yayoi life, I want to further expand on Yayoi religion with an artifact that is found throughout the Yayoi period and is a very important aspect of their culture. I'm of course talking about the Dotaku. The Dotaku is a bronze bell and was used in rituals. It is believed that the bells were used to summon spirits or deities to bless their crops and give them success in future hunts. Around 430 bells were found in total. Most were decorated with human and animal figures, which we think represents animal worship and divinity. The bells were usually found buried in hill terraces with fertile soil. which may mean the Dotaku was an important ritual object they wanted to preserve. The next text we'll be looking at is the Wajiden, or the Commentary on the People of Wa. It was published around 280 to 297 AD. It was a series of passages that were found on the 30th volume of the Chinese book called the Three Kingdoms. The passages give us another glimpse on the people of Wa. It is stated that the people of Wa were great swimmers and liked diving to catch fish and shells. The Wa people were said to eat raw fish and hunt for deer and boar. They ate out of fine pottery with just their hands. It is also said that the people walked barefoot all year round. Now that we went through some of the Chinese documents and have an idea about the Yayoi way of life, this leads us to our next segment, the accuracy regarding these sources. We don't have any proof other than from Chinese texts that Queen Himiko even existed. Two important Japanese texts like the Kojiki and the Nihon Shoki don't mention Queen Himiko at all. They do mention 3 important female shamans, but none of them line up to how Queen Himiko is described by the Chinese, that she was unmarried and chosen by the people and had a younger brother that helped her rule. Not only that, but modern historians can't agree on the location of the Kingdom of Yamatai, which is one of the biggest controversies in Japanese history. Some say it may be in northern Kyushu or the province of Yamato. There is also debate on whether the history of Wei or Nihon Shoki is the more reliable source. That is to say, there is a lot of information that is still up in the air. Next, we have an issue with the dating of the Yayoi period itself. The Yayoi period is a farming culture that uses metal tools. The problems with the dating of the period are that the transitions between the Jomon, the Yayoi, and the Kofun period are confusing. For example, the early Yayoi period lacks metal artifacts, and that sites from the previous Jomon period, specifically at the end of the Jomon period, had evidence of rice farming, meaning the only reliable way to date the Yayoi period was from their pottery, which yet again, early Yayoi pottery was no different than Jomon pottery. Then we have the discovery of the Kofun period tombs, known for their distinct keyhole-shaped mounds, being dated older than 300 AD. So we have a scenario of whether the late Jomon period could actually be part of the early Yayoi period, and that the late Yayoi period could instead be the start of the Kofun period. However, there is still good news. It was found that the radiocarbon dating that was done in the past was not calibrated correctly, and that recent radiocarbon dating has dated the Yayoi period closer to 1000 BC instead of 300 BC, quite a big difference. But not all experts agree to this finding. What do you guys think? The dating of the Yayoi period is quite complicated. To end off the video, I want to take a look at an artifact from the Yayoi period that I found pretty interesting. A wooden mask that is around 1800 years old. This mask was found in Higashi, Osaka, at the ruins of Nishi Iwata on April 24th, 2023, which is pretty recent. The mask was made from Japanese cedar. The mask measured 30 centimeters long by 18 centimeters wide and is 2 centimeters thick, or 11.8 inches long by 7.1 inches wide and 0.7 inches thick. It was discovered while working on the Osaka monorail in flood sediment that was 2.9 meters or 9.5 feet deep below the surface. They also found the remains of a bucket and another wooden object that looked like a hoe that was charred from a fire. It is theorized by experts that the wooden mask and the other objects were used in agricultural festivals. The mask had a hole on the side that suggested it may have been worn, but according to Kiryu Terasawa, director of the research center for Makimukugaku, Sakurai City, in Nara Prefecture, he thinks it was too heavy to wear and was used for display instead. This wooden mask is one of 3 masks found around this time period and is a very interesting find. There you have it, the Yayoi period, an archaeological advanced society that is not well known. What is fascinating is you can still see some aspects of Yayoi culture in modern Japan, like their interest in mass culture and spirits. What I found interesting about the Yayoi is their lack of writing. It makes it difficult to learn more about them, but also makes for a fun mystery to uncover. I look forward to more news about the Yayoi in the future. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something new. There's still plenty to learn about the Yayoi culture, such as looking into the settlements at Yoshinagari and Asahi to see how the Yayoi lived. That would make for an interesting video. If you guys have any history topics you would like for me to cover, let me know in the comment section below. I will be making a Patreon for those who want to support my channel, but I'm still thinking about how to go about it. I want to make sure I'm more consistent in uploading videos first. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video.